All right, 7 o'clock. So we'll call the meeting to order. We have a full commission tonight, and I'll start with the remote meeting preamble. So good evening. This is the meeting. This is the open meeting of the February 23rd, 2021 Hopkinton Conservation Commission, which is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Conservation Commission is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by HCAM. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast by voice or video may be captured by the recording. Supporting materials that have been provided to members of the commission for this meeting are available on the town's website. After commission members and staff have discussed each project application on the agenda, the chair will then open the discussion to public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak are asked to identify their name and address. 3 minutes will be afforded for each public comment. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote of the commission members. And at this time, I just want to confirm that members of the commission are present and can hear me. Melissa Ricos.
Here.
Carrie Reed.
Yep.
Janine LeBlanc.
Yes.
Ted Barker Hook.
Here.
Ed Harrow.
Here.
And Jim Cirillo.
Here.
This is Jeff Barnes, and we have Don McAdam present.
Yes.
We have Anna Rogers present,
Present.
and we have the town's consultant, Matt Vero, with Lucas Environmental present.
Here.
Okay, very good. So let's jump right into the work session items. Don. So we have the order of conditions from Mastriani. I took a look at that. It looks good to me. So I think that's all set, correct?
Yeah, we'll move it along if we don't have any comments.
Yep. Any comments from commission members?
No.
Okay. So new applications received. We have a few NOIs, actually more than a few. Okay, the Toll Brothers Chamberlain Street lots. So those will be on the agenda for the next meeting, Don.
Probably
Okay.
not, because they didn't meet the deadline. So we're looking at the 23rd on the tolls, and 14 West Main might be on the 9th, and Nealon's still incomplete. So we're still waiting on information regarding that.
Okay. All right,
Would
great.
we
Thank
just
you.
look at those lots that are submitted, or would we wait for all of them together?
That's going to be part. Why don't we? Yeah, I think we'll have to talk about that when we open those. That's a good question. You guys will want to look at cumulative. So, but these are just a list, so we're not going to get into reviewing any of them tonight. So,
Yeah, we'll wait till we open them up formally, in the public arena, and then we can talk about them. But okay, good. Okay, Grasshopper Energy 0 Cedar Street. This is 0 and 17 Wilson Street. A project change request. And Don, I think I understood from your email that some of the information came in just recently and you haven't really had a chance to take a look at it.
I haven't, but I got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got about a dozen documents here that I just downloaded. So I'll start opening them up. And they sort of you've got the project change request, then you also had the request for buffer zone clearing. and they overlap. So I figure you should just talk about them both, you know, in this time
Yep.
frame.
Yep, no, that makes sense. Okay. Do we have someone on the call here from Grasshopper Energy that can kind of jump in and give us a status update?
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear me, this is Chris King with Atlantic Design Engineers.
Yes, good evening, Mr. King.
How are you this evening?
Good, thank you.
Just to kind of append what Dawn had mentioned, we really have two, I guess, requests, if you will, before the commission. The first, which was the field change request. And then the second was the clearing within the buffer zone. And so I'd like to address the field change request first.
Okay.
If the commission remembers, I'm sure everybody does, that the last time we were before you folks, Beta had not completed its review of the stormwater yet. Since the last hearing, Beta actually was able to complete their review, and they issued a review letter. And that was just last week. After we received Beta's review letter, we had provided some additional information intended to address the comments that were made by the Beta group. And that is the information that was resubmitted towards the end of last week that Don was referencing that he was downloading now. The Beta review was, it was a pretty clean review, if you will, in the sense that there were only 3 comments that Mr. Paradis had made, 2 of which were specific to the racking system. He just wanted some additional information regarding the type of racking system and the details that we're going to be proposing, which we did provide. And then he had some question regarding the seed mix and the viability of growth beneath the panels. And so again, we had submitted some information. This is going to be a pollinator friendly site. And as part of that, they have 2 mixes, if you will, within the array, a pollinator sun mix and a pollinator shade mix. Obviously, the latter of the 2 would be the one that would be dispersed beneath the panels. And those are, basically a custom seed variety that's determined through the UMass Amherst Clean Energy Extension as part of the pollinator friendly certification program. And those are, obviously of a shade tolerant variety. So we had provided that information back to Beta along with some pictures, basically kind of as our evidence that, the growth is viable beneath the panels. The third and final comment was just in regards to the stormwater design. I think first and foremost, Mr. Paradis had indicated that the stormwater management system as revised before you folks is adequate to mitigate the changes. And he noted that the changes were, relatively minor in nature. I know that the plan set at this rate is a little bit daunting with a number of sheets, but really the only substantive change to the site plans was the addition of the roadside swale that Mr. Paradis had asked for, making sure that all of the runoff coming from the access road is directed to the basin. So really that's really the only change to the site plan that was resubmitted to you folks last week. So, again, as it relates to the field change request itself, again, the reason why we were continued to this evening is to allow Beta time to do its review. They have, I feel like in their letter, they've deemed the change, minor in nature and that stormwater is adequate. And I'm hoping that that is enough to put the commission in a position to hopefully approve the field change request currently before you this evening. The changes are minor in nature. And, we have submitted the requested information and made the plan changes requested by the Beta group. We also had provided a response letter, if you will, to the commission, which speaks to some of the recent comments received by some of the abutters. Granted, some of them are more planning board related, but we felt the need to address them all in the letter before you. And we feel that, again, we feel like their concerns were either addressed during the previous round of permitting, or the item is more of a planning board, is kind of a screening related item. I think the one item that would be related to the Conservation Commission is that Tom Shambo, who resides at 15 Wilson Street, had pointed out that as one of the final conditions of approval as part of the planning board approval, we had agreed to eliminate a couple sections of fence to promote more of a wildlife corridor in the middle of the project. And so again, that was one more, I'm sorry, that was the only other change to the site plans where we had created, I think it's roughly about a 95 foot wide corridor, is kind of centrally located within the project on the eastern half, per the planning board approval. And that change is also reflected on the revised site plans that were submitted last week as well. And then the last piece is that Don McAdam had requested that we provide just kind of a breakdown as far as the square foot of buffer zone impacts when comparing the plan that was approved by the commission back in 2018 versus what's currently being proposed. We have done that, and those numbers show that, you know, there's no change within the 0 to 50 feet. The project has basically remained unchanged within that area, and that really the only change is within the 50 to 100 feet. And we are, you know, reducing the square footage within that category by you know, over 6,000 square feet. So if it's an overall project reduction as far as buffer zone impacts.
Okay.
So we're hoping that all those facts, you know, make it a candidate and meet the criteria for a field change approval.
Okay, all right. So it's a project change request, not a field change, but.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so there's a 6,750 square foot reduction in buffer zone disturbance between the 50 and 100 foot portions of the buffer zone. So that's, you know, that's a good thing. So what was the purpose of aligning the road again? If you can just refresh my memory on that.
Sure. So by the time we had made adjustments, you know, as far as, you know, pulling the project back, for lack of a better term, with you folks, and then some of the changes we realized during the planning board approval process, whether it be making adjustments to the project for, you know, ceremonial stone landscapes to, you know, additional screening requirements, the project footprint was significantly reduced. And understanding tree clearing and clearing within the buffer zone, you know, was a point of contention. The project was, they call it restrung or reorganized. The array itself was reorganized so that by pushing the road up to the top, due to the shape factor, if you will, of the array in that area, it was more efficient to run panels throughout the longest portion of the array. So, you know, all panels run east to west, if you will, for this particular type of racking system. So instead of having the road going through the middle of that portion of the array, we wanted to relocate it to the north, and that would allow us just to get really more linear length of racking within the available, you know, the leftover footprint, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
It also allows us to stack everything and push everything to the north, understanding, you know, most of the shading impacts are going to be realized from the south. You know, we want to get as far away from the permitted tree line as possible. And so pushing everything to the north along with the road allows us to do that as well.
Okay. 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 Matt, did you have any comments on this project change?
I think Beta covered pretty much everything pretty well. I guess, and again, I don't know how much of this is actually in jurisdiction, but maybe the applicant can speak a little bit more about, any concerns of sort of the seed mix taking where it seems like the panels are really very close, much closer to each other than they were previously. And if there are examples of projects that, especially where it seems like there's some credit being taken for this pollinator friendly seed mix, if that's been successfully done elsewhere, it just seems like the panels are so close together. It seems like insects that may be wanting to use the flowers for pollinating. I guess I'll throw it out there if the commission wants to hear more about that or not. To me, I wouldn't mind hearing more about it, but it's the commission.
No, I think that makes sense. That's a good question, Matt. Mr. King, can you just speak to that, please?
Sure. So, I'm certainly not a landscape expert, but my understanding and my experience is that, these projects are, towards the end of construction, will start to go for what they call the pollinator certification. And that's, obviously an incentive that the SMART program has made available to developers and gives them some kind of incentive, monetary, obviously, to make the sense as pollinator friendly as possible. And that, goes, twofold, not only the land management practices, but also the vegetation that's being reestablished out there. The seed mixes themselves are, typically site specific. And, there are typically at least 3 different types of seed mixes. Typically, when a project is evaluated as part of the pollinator process, you submit all of these site criteria along with the site plans to the state, and then a group of individuals through the clean energy extension evaluate basically the different types of seed mixes and the different types of plantings you're proposing on the site, and they'll make comments or recommendations to make adjustments to those so that they're as pollinator friendly as possible. And again, our experience shows that, within any solar project, again, you have at least 3 different types of seed mixes. You have a pollinator mix, that's a pollinator sun mix, that's, to be placed, within the array in areas not directly underneath the panels. You have a pollinator shade mix that's designed to be installed directly underneath the panels, obviously with more shade tolerant species. And then you have more of a traditional conservation or wildlife mix, really outside of the perimeter. That's kind of a low maintenance, low mowing frequency, exactly what it's implied to be, a conservation mix. The seed mixes are basically a custom blend just because the program is so new through the state. A lot of the typical seeding vendors like the New England Wetland plants of the world don't have a specific blend, and so everyone is different, and that's where the site specific nature of the seed mixes comes in. All I can say is that the program is closely monitored by the state. It requires long-term monitoring and evaluation from a certified state biologist to make sure that the pollinator aspect is taking and thriving, because that's what the incentive is based upon, and that monitoring is required throughout the life of the project. And that if the project isn't meeting some of the goals, I know that projects have, been revised in the past, but they do spend a lot of time in coming up with a custom seed mix blend. We did provide a cut sheet showing the species that are included as part of, a typical shade pollinator mix. And that's something that, the program takes into account. I don't know if that exactly answers your question. I don't know that I have a scientific answer per se, but I do know that, there are people that are, specifically schooled and trained in that area who, come up and evaluate these seed mixes to make sure, in fact, that they are going to be successful underneath the panel areas. And there's no set of criteria, if you will, that would, limit the panel layout in that respect. There's no, minimum row spacing or anything like that. I know that Grasshopper has done projects like this in the past, and we did include pictures in the review letter showing kind of a similar type application. And based on that, and just based on the goal of the program, I would, hope to be able to say that, the insects and whatnot do have a chance to cross pollinate. The panel height is still 2 to 3 feet on the lower edge, and I think that that would be plenty of room, particularly for an insect to get in and out from underneath the panels.
So what happens, so when the state does their performance monitoring of these systems, if they find that the mix isn't, growing properly, I guess, do they require it to be reseeded, or how does that work?
I personally do not know. I could not speak to really a level of certainty to that. I do know that there are some sites that we've seen that have, when they were originally constructed, were not constructed with a pollinator mix. And in order to attain and keep the certification, the developer has gone in and had to, quote unquote, eradicate the existing growth and reseed, and then come back and overseed it with a pollinator type seed mix. So that would not surprise me if that is a requirement. If as part of one of the evaluations, it's determined that the pollinator mix isn't quite growing right in certain areas, they would recommend some kind of remedy to make sure that it does start establishing, or come up with some kind of remedy to mitigate that area. But I don't know 100% what the prescribed course of action would be.
Okay. And then in terms of the frequency of, the DCR folks coming out and, reviewing it, or, evaluating the project to make sure that it's growing, do they do that? Is it once per year, twice per year? Do you know what the frequency is?
I don't throughout the life of the program. I know that there are numerous visits, obviously, at the upfront portion of the establishment of the vegetation. And then as it becomes more established, I would think that frequency would probably drop down to, once a year. At the very least, I'm just guessing, but I would think it would be once a year, just to make sure growing season to growing season, everything is taking as it should. I know, a good part of that is also to remove invasive species to give the pollinators a chance to establish. And so I would think just because that's included, that they would, at least go once a year to make sure, something doesn't take hold and, run rampant out of control.
Okay, all right. And just if, I believe that all of the panels are outside of the 100-foot buffer zone on this project. It's been a couple of years, but is that
Correct. That is
correct?
still correct. Yep.
Okay,
We've honored all of the setbacks that we, agreed to as part of the final approval that you folks had granted. That was one of the final shifts that we made for the commission, was to pull all of the panels outside of the 100-foot buffer zone.
got it. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. King. Let me just, Matt, did you have a follow-up question, or is that?
Yeah, just, I don't know where you're not amending the order here. Maybe just as a courtesy, if the commission would like to get copies of the reports that are, whether submitted to the state or however that works. Seems like it may be beneficial for the commission to get those, again, for future projects to see, sort of success rates, things like that.
Yep, I think that makes sense. So the reports he's referring to, Mr. King, are the annual monitoring that, is performed on the growth of the pollinator plants at the site, or whatever
Sure.
frequency it is that they require those.
Sure. I know that, I know that Ahmed Hafez from Grasshopper is on the line with me this evening. Ahmed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the applicant will be opposed to that, providing similar to a SWIP, basically, anytime the report is completed, providing a copy of that to the commission.
No, that wouldn't be a problem. That's okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let me open it up to my colleagues for any questions or comments at this point.
For the chair,
I
this
just-
is Ed.
Yes, go ahead, Ed.
I'm just curious, to maximize the efficiency in a solar industrial complex, you want to get all the sun you can. And it would seem that having the road on the southerly side would make more sense than having it on the northerly side, which would push the panels to the south. I just wondered if Mr. King could enlighten me.
Sure. You're exactly right. And that's one of the first things we looked at. But kind of a non-conservation related issue is that during the final stages of our planning board approval, it was brought to our attention that there may be ceremonial stone landscapes located on our property. And that sent us into a whole different study and level of evaluation, during which point in time we worked with the applicable tribes to identify any potential area on site. And there actually is a stone grouping, a stone wall, for lack of a better description, that runs east to west through this portion of the site. And in order to get the road to ring the southern half, we would have had to have disturbed that wall. And that was one of the criteria that the planning board has set, is that we, do not disturb any of the landscape groupings that were identified as part of that initial study. And so that really precluded us and prevented from running the road down along that southern edge. That was certainly our first choice, but we felt we could not propose that without potentially disturbing that ceremonial grouping. And so we had switched gears and went to the northern edge.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you very much.
Okay, Melissa, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had two quick things more. I don't know if they're questions or comments, but so the original spacing on the panels and the amount of real estate that was taken up for them, I assume that was spaced for an ideal condition that you have for some reason. And now that they're being condensed, is there anything like given up as far as the spacing between the panels, that sunlight or anything like that. I just wonder why you wouldn't have started with that close spacing.
I can take
Downside
this
or-
one, Chris. Yes, there
Okay.
is. We're giving up a little bit on the yield from the overall site, and we were pushed to that position because there was, if you look at the old layout, there was some arrays or like some tables or some panels that were eliminated in the new one for different reasons. So we had to, we run a few iterations to balance how much we can give up on yield while increasing the number of panels, and this was the optimum solution given the constraints we were working with the new layout.
And then with the mix, I'm just a little uncomfortable with the density change and the amount of sunlight, and just concerned about that cover. And if the pollinator is the goal to get that mix in there, and it's not working, and they're coming in and potentially, eradicating that to put something else in or try again, I'm just a little concerned about erosion. If it can't grow, I don't know. A lot of this sounds very theoretical. And is there not a certain amount of sunlight that these plants are supposed to get and can be predetermined to know that that's going to be successful or not?
If I may here, Chris, and you can continue. We have other projects that were at the same row spacing, and we've shared these pictures with Beta Group, and yeah, the vegetation, there was no problem with the vegetation at all. And I don't know if Chris has the ability to share pictures or screen. He can show some pictures.
And the example projects, are they the same angle of the panel? Because these ones are very flat, and are they the same distance from the ground? I'm just looking at the beta sketch and I see 82% coverage.
Yeah, they are not the same angle. They are the same distance from the ground, and they are the same distance from each other.
Through the chair.
Yes, Don.
As I said, I haven't looked at all these various documents, but I see the applicant consultant commented on Monday afternoon, and then Beta followed up with comments later Monday afternoon here. I just don't know anywhere if the applicant has then answered Beta's questions from Monday afternoon.
Yeah, okay.
Hard to tell if it's apples to apples example scenario. And I know every site's unique, but I also know that we have topography here, and it could just be a really unfortunate situation if this grass doesn't take and you have a lot of runoff that you weren't expecting because it was designed with grass cover.
And stormwater management impacts as well as including
Right.
erosion.
Stormwater report relies on the fact that there's grass growing
Exactly.
at a
So-
certain density under the panels. So if that grass isn't growing, then you have a different condition.
And even though it's outside the commission jurisdiction, if it's going to have a threat, the commission has the ability to take that into consideration. It becomes your jurisdiction.
Right. Yep. No, I think that makes sense. That's a good point, Melissa. And I know that the information has been provided to Beta, but to Don's point, he hasn't gotten a chance to review the response. And, I'm not quite sure if, they're in agreement with the information that Mr. King has provided. So, I understand, Mr. King, that you guys are looking for, for us to make a decision on this evening, but, I think there's still a few more boxes that we need to check before we can vote on it, if that's okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
That's fine on this. Like, we would like to give the commission the time to review the documents back and forth between us and Beta, but on the other request, on the other item, which is the crossings, and can we please discuss that? And I know there was a site visit as discussed last week.
Yes, yep. So why don't we move, why don't we agree for the first piece here that we'll just continue this out to the next meeting. So, we have a sufficient time to review Beta's comments.
And if I could just interrupt, I apologize. This is Chris King again. And
Yes.
I think it's also worth noting that this project is certainly subject to the NIPID's standards as far as disturbances over an acre. And so, we don't have, this isn't an instance where we're going to try something and it's not going to work and we're going to be left with a mess. I mean, it's obligatory on us to provide that level of stabilization per the NIPID's permit as well. And so that's another mechanism, if you will, of enforcement to make sure that the grass does grow out here. And again, short of providing pictures of example projects that Grasshopper has successfully built and owns and operates, that's really the evidence we're trying to present and promote.
Right.
But I just wanted to point out that it also is subject to the it's not only the DOER SMART program pollinator certification that will be monitoring this. There's also, the more short term, once construction is stopped and the site is completed, where, we're required to stabilize that under the NIPID's permit as well. So that was it.
Yeah, understood. And no, we get it. The commission, however, we have to do our diligence, on the town's behalf as well. So, just to my point earlier, there's a few more things that we just need to confirm with our engineer. From what I'm hearing, I think it's going to be fine, but again, we want to confirm that.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so we'll continue this out to the next meeting, this portion, project change request. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he still is looking to talk about the small amounts of buffer zone.
Right. Yeah. So that's the second piece of this.
I don't know if you want to do it now or continue it until later on in the meeting.
Yeah, let's do it now. I think it, I guess when the commission discussed this with Grasshopper, at our last meeting, I think the request that was, pretty explicit was that you guys would go out and identify the area where the proposed crossings were going to be, and mark the trees that were planning to be removed so that our consultant could go out and just take a look at it. And, my understanding from our consultant, Mr. Verrill, is that when he went out to the site, none of the trees were identified. So I guess, my, I guess the question to Grasshopper is, we were pretty explicit in the request, why wasn't that done? And I think, the commission needs to have the trees identified so that our consultant, who's already been out there once, and, it was kind of a waste of his time to go out there when the trees weren't identified and marked. But anyways, that's my comment. And Matt, I didn't know if you had any additional data points to add there.
Yeah, I mean, the edge of buffer zone was flagged. So as we walked around the site with representatives of the applicant, we were sort of generally looking at the areas that were within buffer zone to be cleared. But as you mentioned, Jeff, individual trees certainly weren't flagged out. And that was somewhat, my expectation that there would be a ribbon or a spray paint mark on each tree or something. So we could a little bit better quantify it. I had recommended during the site walk that they mark up a plan, which they did provide, that gave at least some indication. I don't think it's this one, Don. I think it was the other one that had the type markups on it. Yeah, with kind of saying, it's approximately 3 to 5 trees over here, 3 to 5 trees over there. So again, it's, if the commission's comfortable with those numbers, then fine. If the numbers need to be hammered down into more specifics, then I don't think that data is available at this point unless the applicant has it.
Okay.
As far
Yeah,
as
so
larger trees anyway.
Yeah. So I think, the intent of our request is that the commission wants to, we may be amenable to allowing the crossing with, a very minimal number of trees being removed to do that. And, with not having the trees marked and having this kind of more nebulous data here, just, 2 to 3 trees, 12-inch diameter be removed. Estimated 5 trees. I'm not comfortable with that. And just, so Grasshopper knows, we've had some requests from, other developers and developments in town, to allow access to, in the buffer zone and in the resource area, to access upland portions of the property, and we've run into problems with that previously. So, I guess, I don't want to harp on this too much, but, I think our request last meeting was very simple, go out and identify the trees. And, I don't have a high degree of confidence that, if you can't do something simple like, go out and mark the trees, then how can we be comfortable that when you, get into the upland area, that the buffer zone isn't going to be disturbed? So, those are my comments, and I'll open it up to the other commission members so they can, provide their feedback.
I'd agree, Jeff, with what you said.
Okay, thanks, Melissa.
So, excuse me, this is Nick Fasandola through the chair. May I provide some comment? Or I was the representative who did meet Matt on the property.
Okay, yes, Mr. Fasendola, go ahead.
So, we did flag the limits of the 100-foot buffer zone. I apologize for not flagging specific trees. I didn't participate in the last meeting. I didn't know though that was the specific request of the commission. It was my understanding that we'd flag those areas and review those areas that were proposed to be disturbed on a temporary basis to make those crossings. So there was no ill intent by the applicant to not flag specific trees. Matt and I, looked at the areas, identified paths, possible pathways, which would involve the least amount of clearing. And, we provided this updated sketch and looked at those areas. And, the range of trees that are identified, 3 to 5, we're not saying 2 to 20. It's a very narrow, limit that we're looking for in that area. So, there's if you look at the plan, the central area, we modified the pathway to stay within the existing cart path, which is existing versus the proposed roadway. which was originally looked at being cleared when this was discussed with the commission at the previous meeting. So that area has, like I said, 3 to 5 trees. All depends on the amount of space needed to get the trucks through there. You know, 3 on the low side, 5 on the high side. They do have to travel with heavy equipment through that area and make their turns. So that's why we're giving that general range. You know, the area shown in the transmission easement, that area is already cleared for the most part. There's a little grouping of trees on the easterly side that Matt and I identified, about 3 trees possibly that would need to come down max. That's right next to a cluster of rocks that's going to need to be pushed over. Very straightforward in that area. You know, the area that would likely benefit from some flagging, as discussed, is the area to the southwest. There are about 5 trees, 12-inch diameter, and another 5 trees, 8 to 6 inches in diameter, that would need to come down in that area for that temporary crossing. So that's the general overview of what occurred. We'll go out there and flag those if needed, but that's the overall proposal that we're looking at here. So one area is, like I said, wooded. 5 mature trees and 5 smaller trees are what was estimated. And then the other 2 areas, one area is already cleared. It's in the gas easement that's in the buffer zone, and one area is already in a primarily within an existing cart path. So that's the limit of the request. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more explanation on what was done and where we are with that.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Fassendol. And, I don't think there was ill intent, obviously, but we just, we had a specific request. There was a reason for it, and again, we've been in, a couple situations in the past where we've, allowed this type of things, and it's come back to kind of bite us in the butt, which is why we, when we evaluate these types of crossings and the work that's being done, we want to be very specific about, what trees are being removed, where the area is that the crossing is going to be located, so that, our consultant knows, the commission knows, and if there's anything that deviates from that, there's no kind of miscommunication. So, if you want to take another stab at it and go back out, I don't know if Matt has time, again, to go out to the site and meet you, but I think, my point is, we need a little more specificity as to, what trees are going to be removed.
Mr. Chair, if I may here, this is
Yes, sir.
Ahmed from Grasshopper.
Yes.
I was on the call last time, and what was asked, or maybe I was wrong, what was asked is to mark the 100-foot buffer and mark the crossings or flag the crossing. And this is like the instructions that we gave to the surveyors, and we had our, Nick Fassendola is the civil engineer working as a consultant with the EPC. He was there and met with Mr. Varel on site. And I would like to ask Mr. Varel, based on the site visit, if we're talking about 3 to 5 trees here and 6 trees there, and was it not possible to flag them there? If we have the boundaries of the crossings marked, would it have been during the site visit, could we have quantified the trees that need to be cut, and is it in line with what you're seeing on the plan there?
Jeff, do you want me to go ahead and answer
Sure, you
that?
can respond, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the representation that's been made on the plan appears generally certainly what we discussed on the site. Again, I think I mentioned to Mr. Fassendol my impression that the actual trees would be flagged, and I suppose that could have been done when we were out there. It wasn't suggested by anyone. my time was somewhat limited. So
Okay,
it's kind of-
thank you.
is what
Thank
it
you,
is at this
Matt.
If I can, Jeff, I think that the point is we just want the contractor and who's going out there and clearing to know their limits. So if we can get them in the field, not just on the plan, so that they know what, you know,
Yeah,
the intention was of where those trees are. I think that's the point. So
can I comment, Mr. Chair, please?
Yep, just briefly, and then we got to move on. So go
Sorry.
ahead,
The
Mr. Heves.
limits were marked, Ms. Records. The limits are marked on the site. So it's just the individual trees were not marked.
Right. Yep. No, we understand. We understand that. Okay, so, you
Through
know,
the chair,
yes, Don,
just
go
one
ahead.
final point. If the commission in the future is saying after the tree, if you want the trees marked, or if you don't, if you're looking to give a green light for the trees now, I just want you to be aware that you're also in the southern area here. That's not the area that was approved for access roadway. So in essence, and you just tabled the project change request to the next meeting. So if you wanted to approve the trees to be cut in this area, in essence, you're going to be approving something that you haven't approved for a project change yet. And maybe you guys are fine with that. I just want that to be made aware that, yeah, okay, we're okay with cutting the trees for an access road we haven't approved yet. That's all I want to point out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point, Don. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Sorry, Jeff, just one more point. I guess in fairness to the applicant too, I don't know if there's a threshold that the commission has where they would deny the request. As far as, if they were to come in and say, okay, we need to cut down 20 trees total that are 8-inch diameter or more to do this, just so that if they do go out and count the individual trees, and mark them, that they know, okay, well, if there's some maximum number that is being applied here, that they can potentially, I don't know what they might do to modify it, or talk to the contractor to say, okay, this tree can't be cut at this point or what have you. Just, I guess, so that they have an indication, so that we don't wait 2 weeks and then come back and you say, well, it turns out it's 15 trees and the limit was 14.
Yeah, I don't think there's any limit. What the commission is looking, and I'll speak, from my perspective, I don't want to speak for everyone, is that, I think the point is we're amenable to the crossing, with the understanding that, the minimal amount of trees are going to be removed in order to gain access to the upland area. And that's why the request was, identify the buffer zone, but also identify the trees so that our consultant can review it. And in the field, in real time, and say, is it really necessary that all 15 of these trees in this crossing area have to be removed? Maybe only 10 of them do, and there's an on-site discussion so that when we come back, Matt can message to the commission, yes, Grasshopper Energy identified the trees at the crossing that were going to be removed. We talked about it in the field. We came to the conclusion that, it didn't need to be 15 trees that had to be removed. They were able to gain access with only removing 8 of the trees. So I think it's just that comfort level that the commission wants, as opposed to just saying, yes, we'll approve this plan where, there's estimates on the numbers of trees being removed and the diameters. Matt hasn't been out there to confirm it, in terms of specific trees and that type of thing. And the reason we're requesting this is, again, the commission in the past has given, developers the benefit of the doubt in situations like this and said, okay, we're going to allow it. We'll approve a plan that says you're going to take 5 to 8 trees down, and then you're going to stay out of the buffer zone once you get onto the site. And then, as it turns out, it's 30 trees that were removed. The crossing, the equipment, went across the crossing that was approved up into the upland area. And then lo and behold, that when the contractors were in the upland area, buffer zone got disturbed. And, the response that we get is from the developers, well, the contractor didn't know. He didn't realize that, this was what was approved at the meeting. And, we've heard that a couple times. And I think that's the reason why, the commission now is taking, a more detailed and meticulous approach to this, to prevent those things from happening. Because once the trees are cut down, they're not going to grow back in 2 years or 3 years. They're gone, right? So we have to look out, for the resource areas, number one. But, we have to look out for the interests of the town and the abutters as well, when we're reviewing these projects. So that's the point. And, the commission is happy to, if Mr. Fasendola wants to go back out on site and mark the trees so Matt can, review it, we're happy to reconsider the request, but, we can't make a decision just based on, non-specifics is the point. Okay, and I'll just open it up to, are there any final comments from commission members? Okay, any comments from the public at this point?
So for the chair, this is Nick Fasendola. So just to confirm, I will mark the trees and I'll coordinate with Matt if that's okay with the commission.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Jeff,
Yes, ma'am.
just one last comment from me, and I guess it's directed to Mr. Fasendola. I think when we were out there, the actual tree clearer himself wasn't out there. And I felt there was a little bit of question on, okay, how big is the equipment? Can it make this corner or not? As far as which trees we're going to have to go down. So if there's a possibility of actually having the person that's going to be out there running the machine that knows how big the machine is and how tight he can make a corner, I think that would be very beneficial to know really, because again, you don't want to underestimate, you don't want to overestimate. Having the proper people on the site to help make that call, I think will be of benefit.
That's a great suggestion.
Sure, Matt. We'll coordinate with the contractor and yourself once everything's flagged, and then we'll all meet out there together.
Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good
Thank you.
evening. Okay. So Claro 0 Hayden Row, this is a continuation of a notice of intent for a single family home. We have someone from Goddard Consulting on the call.
Yep, Dan Wells here. Also, Bob Poxon is here.
Okay, how you doing, Mr. Wells?
Good, thank you. All right.
So you want to give us a quick overview as to where you guys are at?
Are you on, Bob?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
So at the last, so Mr. Claro, I discussed with Mr. Claro some modifications that he'd be willing to make to try to limit the amount of disturbance in the buffer zone. And what we've come up with is he's reduced the width and the length of the garage by 2 feet in each direction. He's eliminated a 2-foot bump out on the for the fireplace. He eliminated the deck. He shortened up the width of the house by 2 feet, and we've moved everything over as much as we could with the setback constraints. And in doing, and then we reduced the backyard to 15 feet, except with the corner of the garage where it's really about 12 feet. And so that we reduce the amount of disturbance within the buffer between 50 and 100 by nearly 3,000 square feet.
Okay. All right. All right, let me open it up to the members of the commission for their comments, questions.
So this is Janine. I appreciate the changes that were made, and I know it's a difficult lot because of the size and limited area that's not in buffer zone and setbacks, but I just really can't support a project where half of the house is in the buffer zone. That was all.
Okay, thank you, Janine.
Through the chair,
Yes, Ted.
I was going to say pretty much exactly what Janine said. So I am squarely in that camp.
Okay, thank you, Ted.
Through the chair,
Yes, Ed.
and if I may echo both Ted and Janine, thank you.
Okay,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
yes,
My name is Dave Claro. I'm actually the contractor, the owner of the property.
yes, Mr. Claro. Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Just had a couple of quick comments about this property. Earlier this week, we received an email, I believe it was from you, regarding another property on the same road, right on Hayden Row.
Correct,
And,
yep.
and it basically showed, a proposed property and one that was ultimately approved. And looking at the one that was ultimately approved, there was some similarities with my property. I guess the amount of square footage, the amount of disturbance of the actual structure into the 100-foot buffer zone was very similar as far as size, distance to wetlands. And that's basically where the similarities stop short. The differences are that my property is completely, aside from say 650 square feet or so of actual structure into the 100-foot buffer zone, the rest of my project is completely outside of it. This other property that was approved had just about the exact same amount, but it had a driveway, probably about 1,500 square feet or so, that was completely in the buffer zone. It had ejector pumps, force main, water lines, swales, stone walls. So as far as the actual disturbance, or I don't know if you want to call it a disturbance, but encroachment into the 100-foot buffer zone, mine is far, far less of an impact. Everything else is completely outside of it. It's a fairly level lot. I would say it's fairly easy to control any kind of erosion, any kind of problems, any kind of impact into the actual wetlands. I'd say it's fairly easy to control. Then I guess on a side note, I'm a reputable builder. I pride myself on what I do. I do a nice job. I make sure I follow all the rules. I don't skirt anything. Whatever I need to do, I do. And I do it with pride. And I feel like this house would fit this area in size, in just the overall look of it. You have a really just compare the values of the properties in Hopkinton compared to a lot of the other towns, surrounding towns. The values are higher, and the reason why is because people generally take a lot of pride in what they do there, and I think I'd fit in. I'd do a really good job for you guys, whatever you guys felt was I guess necessary for me to do, I'd be more than willing to do. So I hope you guys take that into consideration.
Okay, great. Yep. No, we appreciate that and understand. To your point, in the comparison of the two lots. And you are correct. I sent that, as kind of an example of, what the commission would be, would typically be looking for. But one of the big differences between, that lot and this one is there was a house on the other lot previously. So that entire area, and it was abandoned, by the way. But the majority of the area where the house was built and the driveway installed was all previously disturbed. Whereas this lot is currently undisturbed right now. So that's why the commission, I think, is looking to, try to minimize the impacts to the resource areas here.
If you don't mind me just adding just one last thing.
Sure.
And again, I appreciate your time. As a builder, you do have limitations on what you can build. You can overbuild and lose money, and you can underbuild and lose money. And there is a sweet spot. There is an area where you need to be in to actually be able to make money. And this is essentially how I make my living for me and my family. And if I were to, for example, get rid of the garage as an example, lop that completely off, and now I'm much further away from the 100-foot buffer zone. Well, just the cost of doing a house in this day and age is just it's through the roof. Lumber prices, windows, siding, sheetrock's gone up. This house alone is probably $15,000 to $20,000 additional just in lumber. So when I go to build something, it has to fit within a certain sweet spot, and if it doesn't, then it's just not worth building. Period.
We understand that, and unfortunately, the commission, we understand, what the cost of building is, and unfortunately, the commission, doesn't take that into consideration. Our priority is, protection of the resource areas, right, in the buffer zone, and we're willing to, we are willing to work with you. My suggestion on this is, you heard from 3 of the commission members. It's a 7-member commission. I don't know if any of the other members want to comment, but my suggestion would be just to maybe go back to the drawing board with Mr. Wells and just see where he can tighten it up, or not. If you want, we can vote on it in its current condition as presented, but you run the risk of it, possibly not getting approved. So,
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Yes. Who are we speaking with?
This is Dan Wells from Goddard Consulting.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Wells.
So I just wanted to, point out that there's the bylaw has a 50-foot no build setback, and this project has been designed, to honor that setback. And there's a pretty substantial revision to this plan. There's essentially, 0 backyard, and it's been tightened up, pretty much as much as could be, shy of losing the garage, say, like Mr. Clara was just mentioning. So I feel like in the spirit of, the rules say, you can't build within 50 feet. There's no building within 50 feet and well beyond that, and the limit of work was pushed considerably away from that 50-foot buffer. So, I think, to give some more consideration to that fact, I'm not sure. It's not like there's like that other project you mentioned down the street. There was an actual vernal pool just next to the, to the house. This is the condition of the wetlands on this site are nothing pristine like that. There's no prime wildlife habitat that's being impacted. There's there's quite a few invasive species, a high percentage on the property. So I think in the spirit of trying to avoid and minimize impacts to the resource area itself, this has been pushed quite a bit away from not just the wetland itself, but even much further past the 50-foot buffer. There's any pushing everything up closer to the road would require, a variance from the zoning board, which is, none of us know exactly if that would pass. So, but in the spirit of, like I said, this is, Mr. Claro made a pretty significant reduction in the limit of work, almost 3,000 square feet. So I'd just like to throw that out to you and the commissioners just to consider that. And, is there something we're missing, that's by adhering to that no build buffer, and going well beyond it? I feel like this project is, complies with the regulations of the bylaw.
Through the chair.
Yes, Don, go ahead.
Just 2 points. Yeah, the commission did mention at the last meeting that has the ability to request if the applicant has sought a variance to move the house further. Looks like that hasn't happened. And the commission has to look at the cumulative impacts. It's not just the one lot you're looking at the total. And the lot here might have needed, based on the information we're getting now, might have needed a filing, and we never got a filing for that. So basically it's not just one lot, it's the cumulative impacts that you're looking at. And all work within the 100-foot buffer zone is discretionary. You have setbacks, and if that doesn't meet the setbacks, it's a variance request, but there is no by right to put a house outside the setbacks. Everything's unique. The commission has to look at cumulative impacts.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, Don. Okay, so I mean, let me open it up to comments from the public. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question or comment?
Through the chair, this is Ed.
Yes, Ed, go ahead.
So we're looking at a picture now. And then the plan drawing, it implies that the lot is tiny, but yet I think the lot extends much further to the left than is shown in those plan drawings. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all wetland in the back there, though. Buffer
All the
zone.
way to the right of way?
Can you just zoom in on that, Don, please? Yeah.
So now if we move towards the right of way, the railroad line right of way. So that back area there, is that? I'm just wondering if it's conceivable that the house, I mean, I realize it's still a wetland crossing and it runs a whole lot of other issues, but I just didn't know whether it would be feasible to have the house back there.
Through the chair.
Yes, Don.
You've already had 3 crossings, wetland crossings on this, at least 2.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to look, all these houses were approved as one grouping, Ed, so that's why Don is referring to the cumulative impact of all the development that's going on out here.
Yeah, that's all before my time, right?
Yep. All right, so Mr. Wells,
I'd be very surprised if that isn't all wetland all the way to the back as well, Ed, just for your.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, even if it isn't, this is all, I mean, the buffer zone is going to be the 50 foot, is going to be well beyond, beyond the wetland boundary there. So it doesn't look like there's any room to put a house in the back to me. Okay, so Mr. Claro, Mr. Wells, I mean, we can vote on it tonight if you like, or if you'd like to, think about it, we can continue it out to the next hearing. I'll put that on the table and you can decide here in the next minute or two.
I'm sorry. I don't know how much more I could minimize, for example, the yard. I don't know how I'd be able to minimize the garage to make it any less it starts to become not usable, or you wouldn't be able to fit the vehicles inside it. I just think that we can't really kick it forward or to the side anymore. I don't know if you guys have any suggestions.
I mean, I guess just, I'm not a builder or an engineer, but, I think just looking at this from a, kind of common sense type of approach. And I know that, there's certain, margins that you're looking for when you build houses, but I think the one I proposed, or the one I sent to you, had the garage kind of underneath the house. So, I don't know if that's an option. So proposed 4-bedroom house. I don't know if you can reduce the square footage of it. Those are kind of a couple of things that jump out at me, but that might be something you may want to consider.
I think by doing a garage under, it ends up raising the house up, about 8 feet. Otherwise, you'd have the driveway pitching into the garage in this particular lot. You don't want to have a downward pitch. And then you'd be filling all the way around it, which I think probably would end up ultimately even having more of an impact on the buffer, the way everything would scale out.
All right. I mean, we can't design the house for you, right? We're just here to evaluate, the proposal and vote on it. So I guess I'll just, put the offer out again. We can vote on it tonight, or if you want to regroup with Mr. Wells and kind of put your heads together, we can continue it out another meeting.
I think I'd rather just go for the vote.
Okay. All right, if I can get a motion to close and approve the notice of intent for Claro 0 Hayden Row Street.
So moved.
Ted made the motion, and a second, please.
Second.
Melissa seconded, and we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa?
Aye.
Carrie?
No.
Janine?
No.
Sorry, Janine, was that a no?
No.
Okay. Ted?
No.
Ed?
No.
Jim?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at the last meeting and I haven't caught up on the details, so I'll abstain.
Okay, and Jeff is a yes. So I think we had 2 yeses and 4 noes. So the motion doesn't pass. Okay, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Jim, so we had
Through the chair,
yes, Don.
I was just wondering, it's probably too late. Sometimes on these, you would bifurcate the vote under the act and under the bylaw.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if the commission would want to reconsider the vote and see, because right now
I think we
What's the
already
value?
voted. I think we already voted, Don, so we're gonna have to go with what we
Yeah, but the people who just voted could ask to withdraw the vote, and then the commission could start again and bifurcate the vote.
I think the applicant already dropped off.
I'm
I see
here.
The applicant's here.
Oh, okay.
So-
But I think, I mean, generally speaking, since the bylaw is stricter than the act,
Right.
a negative vote on the bylaw would presume a negative vote under the act.
No, not all the time,
That way.
because this is just a buffer zone filing. Some of the commission members might be more amenable to the project under the act and under the bylaw, because a lot of the things I was hearing was buffer zone and cumulative impacts that go beyond what the act does. So,
Yeah, I understand, but our bylaw is stricter than the act, so our requirements are stricter, more stringent. And
yeah.
if I feel that there's impacts from a project, and I understand I didn't vote on this, but if I feel that there are impacts on a project under the bylaw, then I'm certainly going to feel the same way under the act, regardless of whether the act has the buffer zone versus the resource area. So I'm just saying that.
Right.
Yeah,
And
Don,
all
we'll
I was
just,
saying was that in the past, there have been some votes where the commission voted to approve under the act and to deny, and not enough votes to approve under the bylaw. Just didn't know if this might be one of those situations.
yeah, I think we already voted, Don, so we'll just stick with, the vote as we,
Okay.
okay.
Sure.
I should have specified that beforehand, but I didn't, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the Upper Charles Trail Committee, the Campus Trail Connector.
Yeah.
Jim, did you want to kind of give us an overview on that?
Yeah, I want to just bring you up to speed. Don, were you successfully? Yeah, you go. So that memo there, by the way, is the field report or sidewalk report from VHB. I went through it, Don, and I just got a couple of minor things, but otherwise it's fine. You could distribute that too. Upper Charles Trail, as many may know, we're working on connecting Ashland to Milford, and it's being done in phases and this is the latest phase, and this is the one that's progressed the furthest right now. It's called the Campus Trail Connector. It goes from the existing center trail, which is up in the upper left corner, through the interior of the loop road, essentially, out to what is McDermott Lane, across from EMC Park, and then it would cross over EMC Park, go out behind the schools. So we've walked it. VHB has laid it out, surveyed it, and they have a grant application being finalized to go in. I expect that we're going to have a notice of intent submitted in June. I'm hoping, I've mentioned to everybody, let's try to do the notice of intent completely, or as completely as we can, and not have to go back 2 or 3 times like some applicants seem to. But I'll just run through where the path is. The path is, if you look at, let's go from one. From Center Street, or from the Center Trail, it follows essentially the alignment of the old railroad bed, but it's on and off the railroad bed, depending whether the railroad bed has been excavated in a lot of places, and so it's actually part of the wetland. So they've diverted the trail around. I've walked it a couple times. The only crossing is the one you see in section 6. It would be proposed as a boardwalk. It's probably at this point going to meander a little bit to avoid cutting mature trees. So it's probably about 100 feet long, give or take. It's the only way to cross that area to join the 2 parts of the trails, because we can't get an easement on the private property above number 6 of the boardwalk. So it's it's generally all within our wetland resource area of the bylaw. However, there's no direct impacts, no filling, even though it might look like the railroad bed is wet, it's not. The only thing is the boardwalk, and then there's a small area that was referred to in the I think it was section 5. And I think the wording was there's water running nearby or alongside. It's not running water. It's a wet area. And what they're talking about is on section 6. If you come from 7 to 6, you'll see the edge of the wetland, and the trail comes down and goes, below like a J. There's a little part there that's, I don't know, maybe 10 square feet of wet land that, rather than putting a boardwalk across, we'd like to propose filling that in. I think it's insignificant, but we wanted to add something we could. We're going to have maybe doing some compensation for the boardwalk, but so anyway, so I think the notice of intent, June, but it's a great alignment. It's the best alignment. VHB has laid out and surveyed a 40-foot path, basically. Within that 40 feet will be the 16-foot wide road bed or path bed and the slopes. So there's room within that 40 feet to meander, put it one way or the other. All right. So that's it. Any questions?
Jim, I'm just curious, what happens when it hits Hayden Road?
So when you get to Hayden Road, ultimately the crossing to EMC Park will be improved. The signaling, the width, the accessibility, and that would be a crossing from the west side of Hayden Road to the east side EMC Park. It'll be a crossing similar to, say, Milford's on 85. And then you go out, and then it will go out to EMC Park, and either behind the schools or to the north. So anyway, the answer is it crosses Hayden Road with a crossing like Milford uses.
Okay.
Mr. Daushi, did you have a question?
A comment. Speaking for the Hopkinton Area Land Trust, HALT holds a conservation restriction on the undeveloped land within the Loop Road. We met with VHB and members of the Upper Charles Trail Committee on site and looked at a slight variation in the what is shown on the map here is the alignment in the vicinity of the number 1 on the map, field 10. We suggested a route which is slightly closer to the wetland, but avoids removal of some major trees. The engineers and the folks from Upper Charles seem to feel that that was reasonable, and they are going to look at that adjustment, even though it's slightly closer to the wetland. It will minimize the clearing.
Yeah, if you're done, Chuck, I'll just add that it has no effect on the wetland, and what this shows is essentially the path along the edge of the field. And as Chuck was saying, we're taking out some trees. We've just pushed it back away from the field and have a natural tree buffer and saving the larger trees. So it's a realignment. It is laterally closer, yes. Thanks, Chuck.
So will it be the same packed material as Center Trail?
Well, that's not been totally decided. I can't speak on behalf of Arbor Charles Trail.
What I can say, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, my understanding is that in order to obtain the grant from the Mass Trails, it has to be a surface similar to Milford. I forget if it's Class A or Class 1. Jeff, you probably know. But it would, if that's the case, it would incorporate permeable pavement. But I don't know if that's been decided yet.
a point still under discussion because the conservation restriction prohibits new pavement. And there, we do also have an indication from the state that it is possible to get funding for stone dust. That is certainly the hope of the HALT and other trail-centric organizations in town as well.
Well, not speaking for the Upper Charles Trail Committee.
Correct.
I think that a stone surface is great and better. I think it's much better, but you know, there's some dissension on the committee.
Okay, well, we're not here to debate what the trail is constructed of, so.
So we'll
okay.
we'll see one of two options, Chef.
Yeah.
Or we may see sections of different options. I don't know how the final plan is going to be.
Yeah.
But if it is paved, quote unquote, it'll be permanent.
Okay, that sounds good. So the notice of intent is expected in June, you said, Jim?
Yeah, my understanding is it needs to be done as part of the grant application, and the grant application is to be submitted the end of June. So I'm expecting we will. And any alternatives, by the way, there's only one area that I would consider we need alternatives, and that's the boardwalk crossing. And we have looked at the alternatives, and there is an alternative because we can't get easement onto that private property. But so that'll be in there because I know that's one of the things we always look for.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yes, Don.
just for giving Jim further comments or the board. The commission had filings, wetland filings for the high school and for the elementary school. There were various wetland crossings here, over here. So there again, you know, a boardwalk is one type of alteration. I thought I heard you also mention fill. So you had fill of wetlands on both of these. So you'd be looking at then, you know, the commission would want to know cumulative, like how much did we already fill in the past and how much more are you looking for? And if we look at
In this case, Don, in this case, I mean, it really is like 10 square feet.
okay,
When you come off of the sort of 7 and go into the 6, where there's a red, the red dashed line is the alternate route. But we would have to be able to get onto that property that's private, and they won't let us. All that provides is a shorter boardwalk, basically. So anyway, where that dashed line goes off of the solid line, there's a wet area, and the 16 feet alignment may wind up needing 10 square feet of that.
right.
So it's not.
I don't think the commission ever considers like boardwalks like a fill, you know, it's just like a.
No.
No,
Right.
it's an alteration, but it's to a lesser extent than, you know, they don't think of it as permanent. You can always pull up
the boardwalk.
right. It's sort of like
The boardwalk's long. It's like maybe 100 feet, but the area that would be filled, if you will, is 10 square feet, maybe plus or minus of where the trail embankment would have to be.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would.
Anyway, it'll be on the plan. It'll be on the plan.
Yep.
It'll be
All
on
right,
the
well,
plan.
we'll take a look at it when it comes before the commission.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Okay. Looks good, though. It'll be nice to see that trail extended out to Hayden
Yeah, it
Road.
will. Yeah, it will.
All right.
All right. Am I next with Sandy Beach?
Yep.
All right. Don, thanks for all the info. Let me see if I can get my stuff in first, which includes that. So I don't know. I guess some of you may know, Sandy Beach improvements were done, God, I guess it was 7 years ago or something. And as part of their submittal of notice of intent, they were supposed to do parking lot improvements and stormwater BMPs and some replication. That never got done. I was trying to help them, and I kind of dropped the ball, and I haven't talked to Dave or Jake Alfie in probably a month. But those things were never done. The rest of the project was done, I assume, according to plans. I don't know what happened out there. I don't know if the things that weren't done were not part of a contract. if Weston and Sampson dropped the ball. I don't know what the hell happened, but somehow it didn't get built. So there is a notice of intent submitted, right, Don, for the boat ramp?
You mean the underwater ramp?
For the seasonal boat dock.
No, we haven't
The
got an
notice of intent-
application for that.
Okay.
No.
Well, so the next project of the, let's say, Sandy Beach improvements is a seasonal boat dock at the ramp, at the existing ramp. I thought they submitted a notice of intent, so they need to submit that. The reason this all came up is because CPC, Parks and Rec, is looking for money to do the seasonal boat ramp, but they don't have a COC on the original project. So here's my questions. Can we, since they didn't do the parking lot improvements, they don't need to do the stormwater, correct? And as you said, Don, if the path didn't fill anything, they don't need to do any replication. Oh, thank you for the map. I know that the parking lot hasn't been approved, right, Jeff?
Well, it was presented as part of the improvements that they were doing to Sandy Beach, but if my recollection is they ran out of funding, so they weren't able to do the parking lot, but
Okay, so they haven't done anything in the parking lot yet.
no.
So can we, they did widen the path from the parking lot to the bathhouse and the play area. I don't know what they did to get to the beach, because I haven't been out there in 10 years, but if they altered to get to the beach and filled, then they would have to do the replication, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember the specifics of it, Jim.
Okay, so
There was
well,
a
here would be my
replication
question.
area that was proposed. Like, I don't remember what it was, why they had to propose it.
Well, I think it makes sense what Don pointed out to me was if there was any filling that went on, because there's accessible, somehow you can access the beach now with a wheelchair or a scooter or something.
Yeah,
but
they
I don't
put
know
a
what
path
they did
in,
to do that. Did they actually fill it in? Well, let's say for the sake of discussion, and obviously this has to be confirmed in the spring. Let's say for the sake of discussion that they didn't do any filling, so they don't need to do any replication. They didn't do the parking lot, so they're not good. So they don't have to do the stormwater. Can we delete, remove, revise the existing notice of intent to remove that work, delete that work from that notice of intent, have them do an as-built, which I still don't know the answer to. Who has it? Does anybody have it? How are we gonna get it done? But then submit the as-built for all the other work that happened to get the COC for all that other work. And then they're gonna have to take it in another phase where they do the parking lot and the stormwater. I just don't. So anyway, so can we do that? Can we, and by the way, folks, Don told me they didn't get an extension. Their permit expired, order conditions expired, what, Don, 2013?
Yeah, whatever.
I think. No, we issued the order December 2015, so it expired 2018. So they never requested an extension.
Right.
And
you had 3 years onto this, that 2015. We never gave an extension permit, so it died.
Right, well, they didn't get extended past 18. So we're 3 years into it, or 2 years into it, with no extension. So notwithstanding that, could we somehow delete that work from the order of conditions and close it out, and then just have them address that as a separate thing anyway? Because Lord knows they're not going to do whatever they thought they were going to do 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be reconciled, so they have to.
But can we do that? Can we just reconcile it?
Yes, Don, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if they submitted a request for certificate of compliance application for you guys to review, you could look at, okay, what did you build? What didn't you build? And then based on if you never widened if you never did the wetland fill, maybe the commission would say, well, then, okay, you don't need the wetland replication. And then, oh, the parking lot was never redone, the stormwater BMPs. You guys could talk about, well, was some of that stormwater BMP improvements mitigation for allowing some of the other, but basically you can't decide, you can't talk about it until you get a request in and you can look at the as-built to see what was done. And then you guys can sort out, all right, yeah, it looks like we could issue a COC or not,
And
Okay, so-
and the other point, Jim, too, real quick, is I don't think the commission is going to be willing to, review a notice of intent for a new dock until the existing work, has been closed out, right?
Right, and that's what gets us to where we are now. So, okay, thank you, Don. I will relay that. Get the as-built. They got to get the as-built, submit the request, and then we'll review it. And then we can move on. They can move on to the boat ramp, the boat dock, and parking lot and the other stuff. Okay, great. I think that's all I have on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Yep.
All right, were there any public forum requests done?
I got a couple, if you know. Is that how that works?
I don't have any, but yeah, if you guys have some, have at it.
Well,
how long are they going to be, Jim, before we say that we can
one's
do
a quick question. Well, I don't know. The second one may lead to a couple of minutes. First question is simply, last time, a month ago, I talked to Jamie, and she was going to have a TCMC meeting about the so-called back part of Hughes. That back part of Hughes is all land under our control. But I guess maybe they haven't advanced the ball enough. I'll get in touch with her again. And the only other thing was if Ted had any updates on the proposed tree cutting limitations.
The update I can give you is Zach is finished. Unfortunately, there were a lot of things, not a lot, I take that back. There were a couple key points that still need massaging. And so the planning board is going to take it up. But I know Janine was there last night. So Janine, if you hear me miss a key point, please jump in.
Okay.
But one of the main difficulties we had is a new measure of tree cutting was introduced. And we were originally talking about percentages of land cleared. So you can look at a parcel of land and say you can clear 30%, say. But then a new, more commonly accepted way of measuring tree clearing was introduced. But because we don't really have a sense of how close that is to percentage of land clearing, we were kind of stuck, not knowing for sure what percentages made sense. So the biggest thing that we're passing along for the planning board to consider is how to measure what percentages of tree clearing permitted make sense. But we forwarded it along. I'm trying to remember if there were any other big points. I think that was the most central unclarified part. Is right now we said, I'm not being very clear, partly because I'm unclear in the definitions, so I apologize. But our original plan was in agricultural and residential districts, you may clear up to 20% of trees without getting special permission to cut more. And in the industrial commercial zone, 70%. Now that we've introduced this new way of—
You can cut up to 70%?
Hang on, just let me finish, Jim. Now that we've introduced a new way of measuring, which includes measuring the diameter of all these different trees, one upshot is hopefully that people will keep the biggest trees, and so they're more careful in their planning. But we couldn't really wrap our heads around what does 20% mean with this different way of measuring. And would that be too permissive? Would it be too limiting? Both in the industrial zones and in the commercial. So that falls to the planning board to try to hash through a bit.
Did you just flip those percentages by chance, whereas 70% is for residential and 30%
Nope.
is for industrial?
The whole thinking there is, number one, there isn't all that much industrial area where there would have to be trees cleared anyway. That the largest parcels of land are in agricultural and residential districts, not in commercial industrial districts. And so 20% of a huge parcel of land is a lot of trees. 70%
Wait, 20% is
of
residential.
of land
Oh, anyway, all right.
is
I
not
don't want to get marred.
as many trees. So that was the thinking there. But again, those percentages are going to be worked on by the planning board. That was the central unfinished business when the clock ran out on Zach.
Where I come from, you used to measure a tree with a caliper, and you would have things like, 6-inch caliper and stuff like that. But I guess there's some new way to do it.
Well, it's just it's a way of, we were talking about what does 20% mean? Does that mean 20% of the land is cleared down to the dirt? Does that mean 20% of the canopy is gone? Does that mean 20% of the trees, if you count all the trees, are gone? So this tool that's being used is one that's widely used in the nation, where you actually measure the diameters of all of the trees and then say, now what percentage of tree is being removed based on the DBH, the diameter at breast height.
I mean, it was an interesting or a creative way to look at it, because it does model the behavior that you are looking for. It incentivizes you to keep the big trees and get rid of the small trees instead, which is sort of the behavior you want to incentivize. So,
and when it comes to
interesting.
When it comes to solar development, which isn't the only place where the tree protection would apply, but it was our impetus, it makes it, I think, a little more difficult for solar to come in, because the trees they're going to want to get rid of most are the large trees, I would guess. They have the biggest canopy, and then they're cutting deep into whatever the allowed percentage is, just by chopping down a couple of the biggest trees, which automatically makes the area they can clear smaller.
So, by the way, I mean, it's clear in there. There's a difference between clear cutting and clearing and grubbing, right? Clear cutting is, leaving stumps. Grubbing is getting everything out of there down to the next soil layer that's not forest layer, right? So
yeah,
it's
the definitions for what you mean by clear cutting.
So the bylaw, I assume, applies to clearing and grubbing first and foremost. And I don't understand why it's just not as easy as, you got an acre of land. There's the acre of land. There's the boundaries. You can survey the boundaries of the vegetation, and a couple of quick math calculations, and there's your percentage. I don't really understand why it's got to be measured on, based on the measurements. The vegetation is the vegetation. All that vegetation, whether it's upper story, lower story, forest litter, that is all vital to carbon sequestration, but also to obviously our natural environment.
So those discussions are still ongoing, and I encourage everybody to please dial in the planning board meetings that discuss it.
Yeah, how do you connect? I watched it on TV last night, but frankly, I got distracted. But
you connect the same way you do for our meeting. You go to the town website and you find the connection to the Zoom meeting, and then you zoom on in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It looks like a lot of work. I mean, I commend.
Oh, I know it is. I know it
looks like a lot of work putting that together.
It was a lot of work. A lot of homework. And I really, without trying to browbeat anyone, I really would love Conservation Commission input into. And I will throw this out too, a discussion we had last week. Jeff, this might be very interesting to you. A discussion we had is, well, who is the enforcement agency for this? Whether the trees are being protected in the way the proposed bylaw, if it gets passed, states. And one suggestion from some of the zoning advisory committee is that the Conservation Commission ought to be a part of that enforcement evaluation. And I backed off saying, I'm not sure. I think that we're only involved with wetlands. And someone said, well, maybe you'd want to take on another task. And I said, I don't know. So there was a little bit of how can the Conservation Commission help enforce a tree bylaw if one gets passed?
Well, I'll make a motion that I nominate myself to be tree limitation czar, and maybe co-czar with Ed.
The town has a tree warden.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
but
do
that's
that.
too much work.
We know the town has a tree. I think right now they have a temporary tree warden.
DPW director.
Right.
John.
Yeah, you might want to get some money and get a real one.
Certainly right now in the proposed bylaw, the tree warden is mentioned as an enforcement officer and someone who has to check in on trees and defining trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not going to work though.
I mean, that would make sense. Let's see how it evolves.
Yeah.
If I could get one word in here, Ted, I apologize. I had all the best intentions. As my mother would say, the road to hell is paved that way, Ed. But I was deflected into other things last night.
And I want to say in all seriousness, I'm not really trying to guilt anybody at all.
No, I'm not
This is a
suggesting
body
that you
that's
are.
interested in such issues. And if
I'm
anyone
guilting
does
myself.
have the time to chip in, it would be really appreciated by the planning board. And now that Zach is, I think, going to be on break for a few weeks, but the zoning advisory committee and the planning board, I think, would really value the input of conservation commission members who have spent a lot of time talking about saving our environment.
All right. Thanks for the update, Ted.
Sure. I hope it was clear enough. I apologize.
Oh, yeah. Yep. No, I got the point. Yeah, it sounds like there's still a lot of discussion that needs to go on, but it's good stuff that they're talking about. So, all right, if I can get a motion to.
Hold on. Oh, through the chair?
Yes, Don.
Just one quickie, because I heard Jim mention the land to the west of the name escapes me, the open space.
To the west of Hughes.
Hughes, thank you. That's what I was, is managed by the Concom. Earlier today, I got a request from an Eagle Scout to make some trail improvements. So I don't know if that's what you were thinking about, Jim. That's going to be coming off in the next meeting. The Eagle Scout's going to make a presentation to you guys for the land you guys manage, the Concom manage.
Yeah, that may be good. There's a couple of crossings that are just logs thrown across the stream bed.
Yeah, he wants to make improvements to those. Yeah, boardwalks.
I think TCMC would like to, I'm pretty sure, from the end of Hughes, go all the way to whatever that road is there.
Yeah, it's in the Charles View subdivision. I forget what.
Yeah.
Joseph, it might be Joseph Road.
Joseph. They would want to go all the way, I'm pretty sure, with the same path that's on Hughes.
Yeah.
And I would not be a big fan of that, I can tell you that. But it will have to come before us, obviously, not only for notice of intent, but to ask us permission to do it.
Yeah, it's dual.
Just like the Boy Scouts do.
Yeah.
God bless the Boy Scouts, man. And now it's called the Scouts because there's girls and boys. There will be eagles. There will be girl, female, biologically female Eagle Scouts.
Good.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Dowshy, do you have a quick comment?
Just regarding the nature of the proposed trail work going out to Joseph, from Hughes to Joseph. It is not proposed to surface the trail similar to what's been done on the Hughes property. The nature of the trail that's there now would be the same with some minor maintenance, and it would be a matter of improving the stream crossings. That's all.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you. All right. So if there's nothing else at this point, if I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
So moved.
Janine made the motion, and a second.
Second.
All right, Ted, and we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Ted?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Jeff is an aye. All right, great. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
Good night.
Take care.
Yeah.